Our old friend Brad Friedman, friend of the show, bradblog.com is his site, is on the line with us, the founder and publisher of the Brad blog, Brad Friedman, BRADBLOG.com. Brad, welcome back to the program.
Hey, great to be here, Tom. How are you, sir?
I am well, thank you. Great to have you with us. I hope you are well as well.
Thank you, I am.
And everybody in your family or in your life. The last time we talked, there were two things that were kind of up in the air, and I just wanted to close the loop on them. The first was we talked about how down in Maine, or over in Maine, I guess up in Maine from where I am, and I guess from where you are too, there was an obscure little election that seemed to be, the Republicans seemed to have won via ballot stuffing. And then the other is in Oregon, the last I had heard, they still didn't know if the GMO must be labeled ballot initiative had been passed or not, because they were doing the first ever hand recount when they had done machine recounts in the past. Do I have those two things right?
Yes, almost right. Yeah, we can start in Maine very quickly, and these are, still from the November 4th elections that we are still following. As everyone else has largely moved on, these elections still matter to a lot of people, obviously. Out in Maine, really interesting case, really interesting mystery that I'm happy to report has now been solved. It's actually a rather important election. It was for the Maine State Senate. On election night, the Democrat had won this race in Senate District 25 by just a few votes, so the Republican asked for a recount, which is understandable. Senate District 25 is actually made up of about 7 different little towns. One of them, one of the smallest, is a town called Long Island, and this mystery really was, perfect for Murder, She Wrote, to be frank.
This town is on an island, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it actually is an island, yeah. And what they found when they went back to recount those ballots in Long Island is the only town among those 7 that actually hand counts their paper ballots on election night. Everyone else uses computers to count those paper ballots. Well, as it turns out, in Long Island, all of a sudden, 21 more votes showed up when they did the recount than existed on election night when they counted. 21 more ballots.
And all for Republicans.
All for the Republican in the race, and it didn't make sense because there was 171 ballots counted by hand on election night. 171 people signed in to the voter manifest. No one knew where these 21 ballots came from. Nonetheless, they were all for the Republican. They resulted in flipping that election from the Democrat to the Republican. The Democrat then objected, said, they didn't know where these 21 ballots came from. And so there was a special conference, a special committee set up in the state Senate. Even though they went ahead and provisionally seated the Republican until they figured all of this out, they put that Republican in place. Well, it turns out we now have an answer to what happened in Maine. It wasn't a ballot stuffing case, it appears, but rather after 5 hours of testimony in the state Senate, they did what they should have done in the first place, was they pulled the ballots back out and they counted them again. And what do you know? There was only 171 ballots there after all. There were not 21 extra ballots. Apparently, the Secretary of State miscounted on the hand count, moved one stack to another, and actually double counted 21 of those ballots.
Wow.
So
intentionally or accidentally?
Well, no one knows for sure at this point. Let's say it was an accident.
The Secretary of State is a Republican.
The Secretary of State is actually a Democrat, which
really?
makes this more amazing that the Secretary of State actually certified these results that no one could explain.
Okay.
The good news, by the way, is that hand counting works.
Yes.
Long Island was the only town of all those 7 that actually hand counted their paper ballots. They were the only town of those 7 that, as we now learn, had a perfect count on election night. All of the other towns, which use computers, had to adjust their totals once they bothered to hand count them in the recount.
Wow. Shades of what happened to Don Siegelman in November of 2002.
Yes, where something suddenly changes. The difference here is that because this was all done publicly, unlike with Don Siegelman, where they were supposedly counted in secret, we were able to oversee the entire process.
Well, and in Don Siegelman's case, as soon as he pointed out that he went to bed the governor and he woke up having the governorship stolen because in one district, one Republican guy had discovered, 13,000 extra votes on his computer.
Secretly in the middle of the night and in one of the counties,
Yeah, Don Siegelman started screaming about election fraud, and boom, several months later, he's in prison.
Yep.
Anyway, and in fact, Don Siegelman today is his hearing. Let us not forget. In fact, I think it started at noon, as I recall. I haven't gotten.
It's a big day for Don Siegelman.
Yeah, I haven't gotten an update on it yet. But if you go over to free-don.org, you can probably learn about it. I'm going to try and find out at the break at the bottom of the hour. But back to you, Brad. So that's what happened in Maine. What happened in Oregon, or what's going on in Oregon?
So in Maine, the Republican resigned. The Democrat will now be sworn in shortly. There's some good news there. Back in Oregon, however, you had this huge initiative for GMOs, for GMO labeling of genetically modified food. And you recall that on November 4th in Oregon, they passed a lot of progressive. It was, actually, unlike the rest of the country, it went very progressive up in Oregon, except for this measure 92, which appeared to have lost on election night. In the weeks that followed, as they canvassed and did everything else, and looked at the ballots, there was some 13,000 that were not counted, that were rejected for signature problems on the ballots, because they do all mail-in, all vote by mail in Oregon.
If I can really quickly explain how that works, because I lived in Oregon. You get 2 envelopes along with your ballot. You fill out your ballot. You don't put your name on your ballot. It's a secret ballot. You put the ballot inside an envelope, and on that first envelope, there's a line for you to autograph to put your name on it, and you sign it. And then you put that inside another envelope that you mail it in. So they know from the, and I may have the envelopes backwards here, but basically they know from the envelope that you, this registered voter of this name, actually did vote. And then they know from the ballot how you voted without knowing that it was necessarily you. Am I making sense?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I know that a lot of folks in Oregon love their all vote-by-mail elections. I'm no fan because, in fact, one of the easiest ways to defraud the system is actually by vote-by-mail ballot, by absentee ballot.
Right, which has happened in the UK.
Right, and it's happened, by the way, in Oregon. That said, they love it. It leads to big turnout and everything else, so they like it. But I'm no fan. Nonetheless, 13,000 of those ballots were rejected in this GMO race, which was decided by 812 votes out of 1.5 million cast. So you've got just 812 vote margin, 13,000 votes rejected because local officials said, those signatures don't look like they match to me.
Or people forgot to sign it. Right?
Or they forgot to sign them. The good news is they put out the names for the first time. They put out the names of these 13,000 people and gave them 2 weeks to come in and cure the signature problems. That cured about 8,500 ballots, but there are still 4,600 rejected ballots in this race decided by 800 votes, and the proponents for this GMO measure wanted to have those 4,600 ballots put in because they say, voters are not told that their signature has to match a registration on file that may have been put in years and years ago.
Right, and people's signatures change over time. So we're running out of time here, Brad. So they have not yet decided the race in Oregon?
They have now decided it. The court said, yes, they will be irreparably harmed if these 4,600 ballots aren't counted, and yet law doesn't allow them to be counted. They're thrown out. The GMO folks are conceding this race, unfortunately.
Okay, so the 5,000 ballots wasn't enough to flip it.
It would have been enough had they counted it, but they didn't allow it to be counted.
Okay. Brad Friedman, publisher of the Brad blog. Thank you. Thank you, Brad.
Thanks.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Remarkable. Brad does the best reporting on election stuff in the country. BradBlog.com, 15 minutes past the hour.